meeting to order, and you arise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you like to do the oath of office before the agenda?
I think she put it, where is it?
Yeah, it's right there. It's-
Yeah.
It is before it.
Yes,
Okay,
okay.
we will do the oath of office first.
Have our,
3 of them today.
our new and returning board members join me.
So Eric, we'll start with you. Will you raise your right hand? And repeat after me. I, Eric Youngberg,
I, Eric Youngberg,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I am a citizen of the United States and state of Washington,
that I am a citizen of the United States and the state of Washington,
that I am legally qualified to assume the office of North Mason School District 403, Director, District 1. Is that too long?
I'll
Okay.
read it.
That I am legally
That I am
qualified
legally qualified
to assume the
to
office
assume the office
of North Mason
of North Mason
School District 403,
School District 403,
Director, District 1.
Director, District 1,
That I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United
and
States
laws of the United States
and the state of Washington,
and the state of Washington,
and that I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
and impartially discharge
and impartially discharge
the duties of this office
the duties of this office
to the best of my
to the
ability.
best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Thank you, ma'am.
We'll sign these all after the meeting. All right. Nicole, you're up next. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Nicole Gonzalez Timmons,
I, Nicole Gonzalez Timmons,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
perform and discharge
perform and discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of Director, District 3,
of Director, District 3,
North Mason School District Board of Directors,
North Mason School District Board of Directors,
according to law,
according to law,
to the best of my
to
ability.
the best of my ability.
Congratulations. And yours is just a little bit different, but
That's fine.
that's okay.
Let's try to
Please
keep
raise
up.
your right hand. I, Nicholas Thomas,
I, Nicholas Thomas,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws
and the Constitution and laws
of the state of Washington,
of the state of Washington,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially perform
and impartially perform
and discharge the duties
and discharge the duties
of the office
of the office
of Director, District 4,
of Director, District 4,
North Mason School District Board of Directors,
North Mason School District Board of Directors,
according to law,
according to law,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're in numerical order. Oh, was that a plan? We're in numerical order?
I know.
Oh, no, it could be, I guess.
It was kind of based on the way they got out of their chairs.
All right.
Welcome to all
Yes.
of our new members.
Welcome to our new seating chart, too. It's very student-centered there. So, love it. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the board agenda.
All right, and any discussion on that? I don't think I'm hearing any so far. I will take a vote. All 4 say aye.
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 And any opposed? Not hearing any. That is approved. And then we are on to the public comments on agenda items that are here on agenda items. And for the new people here, I'm just gonna read this out loud. When people come in, they have a chance to sign their name, and then they put their name and what they want to talk about. It has to be on the agenda. And then it says here, North Mason School District Board of Directors values the opinion and input of the community, and this is an opportunity for the public to offer comments regarding issues being considered by the board on matters of the day-to-day operation of the district, such as policy, curriculum, academic standards, etc. And the public is invited and encouraged to meet with the superintendent, and when something is not on the agenda, we turn it over and have them meet with the superintendent later on, and we only talk about out there. So, were there any public comments? Okay, didn't see any. All right, and then we're on to the student board member comments.
So this Saturday we have our winter dance coming up, so it's our second dance of the year. I've got back in contact with the American Red Cross, and we have another blood drive scheduled for May 6th. So that's exciting. And then Honor Society, we're currently doing Veterans Day, like Valentine's Day cards, thanking them for our service. So last Tuesday we went up and made a whole bunch. And we had another student who does like teaching at a Christian elementary school, and she had her class make a whole bunch of them as well. So we have a whole bunch of cards that we're going to send in a few days, like 7 days. We're going to send them overseas.
Cool.
Nice.
That is so cool.
That's awesome.
So they're for active duty?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. For me, for bowling, we made 2 girls go to districts, Isabel Abazalo and then Jordan Young, and one alternative, Spencer, blanking on her last name, but we did not make it as a team.
Okay.
So that's it.
Well, that's exciting.
Okay, and I do realize that I did not ask for the student
You can
approval
do it
of
on
the
the next
agenda.
one.
Yeah, but
It's all good.
thank you for participating.
It's all good.
All right, and I will entertain the approval, or a motion for the approval of our consent items, consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda, though I do have some items for discussion.
Okay, and discussion is open.
Do we need a second before discussion? I forget.
We second?
That hasn't been, remember that, the way they ran it before?
Okay, we don't
Yeah,
need a second.
yeah.
Okay. I had a question about, which policy was this? Number 5005, the disclosures. In what instances do we require drug testing for employees? I just saw that note for it to be added.
And the language that was added was basically to prevent drug testing as a condition of employment.
Right,
And we
right.
don't do that.
So that's what I was wondering, when
There
when
might
would
be a
we-
situation where we have a concern about an employee, and then with all of the right steps followed, we might be able to ask them to take a test at that point in time.
Okay.
In generally speaking. The other time that happens is we do them randomly with bus drivers as part of procedure. And if there is an accident involving a driver, they are often required to do a
Okay.
test.
But it's not a condition of employment.
No,
Yeah,
not to be
generally.
employed.
That's what I thought. And then one comment or question or a couple about the James Taylor mascot and logos. I'm
Yeah.
curious who designed those?
Well, I believe that Garrett was part of the
Oh.
design team, but
I should ask him.
actually, a couple of the staff members worked together and used AI to design the mascot so that it is totally original to James Taylor High School.
And
Pretty neat.
is there a, do we have guidelines on when we would use it, when would we use just the eyes, or when we would use like the letters?
We don't have guidelines on when they use them. That's kind of more whatever's aesthetically pleasing with that particular document or thing that they're going to do. But I think it's very cool that they designed all the possible parts
Yeah.
of the Sasquatch that
The
could be
eyes were
used.
really scary to me, kind of like alone, so I kind of was like, when would you just use just the eyes?
Yeah.
But, the different pieces.
And I think that the kids were really excited, you know, ever since we've named the school James Taylor, which has been 8 years.
Right.
They've tried really hard to come up with a mascot that the students approved of the name of, and they've looked at, the Sasquatch was in there somewhere several years ago, but they just couldn't come to agreement, and they had other ideas, and then they weren't going to do a mascot. They were just going to have, you know, everything represented by a compass, and then, you know, decided some of those connotations weren't so cool either, and the kids finally decided that they wanted a, you know, a being as their mascot and as their representation, and then staff worked to design it, and the kids approved it, and it's pretty cool.
It is cool. Yeah, I
think it looks strong and right before it gets scary. So it
Yeah.
looks like they mean business. I love it. All right. Well, any other discussion? All right. No? Okay. Not hearing any. We will take a vote. All advisory. Oh, the students for it were signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, and I did not hear anything opposed there. So, and for the rest of us, all signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and any opposed? Not hearing any. Thank you. That is approved, and we are on to our on to the technology presentation. Okay.
Welcome, new board members. My name's, excuse me. My name's Clint Forsyth, and I'm the technology director and director of security, safety, and emergency management. I'm going to describe today our state technology status report, and we have some slides here for your enjoyment. Our technology department is under constant pressure to do more with less. Finding a balance between and maintaining a secure computing environment, adapting to new trends, and staying within our budget is a continual challenge for us. Our PC lifecycle management rests on two foundational concepts. As North Mason's primary productivity tool, the PC fleet is managed as a strategic asset. A simple standard client landscape is easier for us and more cost-effective to manage. With these two concepts in place, we are able to efficiently perform necessary management tasks, including determining the optimal refresh rate, optimizing the deployment of new technologies, improving the accuracy of our inventory, and streamlining our builds and service desk support practices, and taking outdated PCs out of production. We've been trying to do yearly replacements of laptops, and within our budget, and finding more. I skipped ahead there. Potential funding sources through Tech MSOCs, which is the materials, supplies, and operating costs, E-rate, and through tech grants. Our life cycle of our network switches. The switches are, a network switch forwards data packets between interconnecting devices throughout the district. Typical life cycle for a switch is 10 years. We have 75 switches throughout the district that are nearing end of support. 9 have already reached that end date. We have 6 within the next 2 years and 52 remaining by October 2027. Our plan is to replace the 2 core layer 3 switches that are due to expire in 2025. And we're going to do that within the next 12 months, preferably over the summer. And then typically our layer 2 switches, which are the remaining devices, are around $8,000 a piece. We need to replace our UPSs district-wide. We have 35. The manufacturer recommends replacing the batteries every 3 years. What these do are, the UPSs are uninterruptible power supplies. They keep the network switches, conditions the power, fluctuations, reduces surging from the line power. And they recommend replacing them 10 to 12 years, the device. And we are on year 9 for those. Our, excuse me, our device replacement, we've got their optimal refresh rate of 2 to 4 years. This allows us to lower our total cost of ownership. It helps with the service desk support. A consolidated approach to these services frees our business groups to concentrate more on the core competencies. We also need to implement more self-service and automated support processes. With the addition, within the past 12 to 16 months of 1,250 computers during COVID, we increased staff computers, and it has been challenging to meet those expectations. It used to take us countless hours to set up to deploy these computers. We added autopilot to help us deploy. This year, we hand a student a laptop, they turn it on, and it auto downloads all of the programs and everything that they need at that time. We have our goal is to give ninth graders a new computer when they enter ninth grade, and they would keep that computer throughout their high school career. If we were to do this in our optimal rate, we would be replacing 2 other grades during that cycle as well. Okay. Our security cameras and hardware, we have some aging hardware. It was installed in 2015. The life expectancy of those cameras are 3 to 4 years, what the manufacturer warranties them for. Our storage, we currently have 3 servers that equal 70 terabytes of storage. We have 1 server that needs immediate replacement. That SAN was installed in 2016, and those servers are expected to last 4 to 5 years. It's important to keep these functional for staff and student safety. We have about 80 cameras at the high school, 50 at the middle school, and 2 at each elementary school. To replace these is going to cost us about $650,000 for the existing hardware, and we'd like to add 20 computers to both the elementaries to their perimeter, and that would cost about $310,000. So I have a spreadsheet here of our phased approach on how we want to pay for these items, beginning with this year. Not sure if you want me to go through it or you just want to browse it, and if you have any questions. But we were looking at a 4-phased approach for the network switches, replacing all the UPSs this year, starting next year with the security cameras. And then you can see our PC refresh is the same amount every year. And then we have some other projects below.
Where did you say, I'm not sure, sorry, I don't know if I missed it. The VMS storage, 3 servers, 1 needs immediate replacement. Where is the 1, or are they all in the same place?
They're all in the same place.
Oh,
So
okay.
we have, I think so all of the cameras are split between all three of those servers.
Okay,
So it's more of load balancing.
gotcha.
What are we doing technology-wise to move in a more virtual direction besides cloud?
So we're trying to move the camera system into the cloud, so we don't have to have that hardware refresh on site. We're moving our virtual machines that are on-prem into the cloud. That's going to happen hopefully this year as well.
Okay. And then the network devices, what, are we're predominantly Cisco, right?
Yes.
Have we looked at any other vendors besides Cisco?
So
Any
part of
place
the
around?
E-rate process, we have to go out for an RFP, out to bid, and then we can see if Juniper or some other vendors are.
There's some major movement right there. That's why I asked that
And-
question, because Juniper
and
just got bought.
Cisco really wants to have us stay with them, so.
No,
They're offering us
of course, and
a
it's,
very good deal.
yeah, no.
Where we go. All right. Is there any other questions?
Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Clint.
Thank you.
Dan, can you come help me with this? If you could present a certificate, they're in order, starting at this end, to each of our
Look at me.
board members. This is School Board Appreciation Month, and so I'm going to read the proclamation from the governor, recognizing our board members for their service to our children, our schools, and the community. It says, whereas the mission of Washington's public school system is to ensure that all students achieve at high levels and possess the knowledge and skills to be responsible members of a democratic society and enjoy productive and satisfying lives, and whereas Washington's 1,477 locally elected school boards of directors and 9 elected educational service district boards are the core of the public education governance system in our state, serve more than 1.1 million students, have a combined annual budget of over $15 billion, and employ approximately 120,000 people. And whereas school boards play a crucial role in promoting student learning and achievement by creating a vision, establishing policies and budgets, and setting clear standards of accountability for all involved. And whereas school board directors are directly accountable to residents in their districts and regions, serving as a vital link between members of the community and their schools. And whereas school boards and ESDs provide a passionate voice of advocacy for public schools and the welfare of school children. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize school board directors as outstanding public servants and champions for public education, now therefore I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim January 2024 as School Board Recognition Month in Washington, and I encourage all people in our state to join me in this special observance. Signed this 8th day of December 2023 by Governor Jay Inslee. So thank you, everyone, for your service now and in the future to our children and to our community, and we appreciate so much the time that you take to help us make sure that our schools are serving the needs of our children. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
So I have a couple of reports from directors, and Chris Turner is going to talk to you. Remember, if you'll remember, in September, we presented some attendance goals, and we're going to talk. Chris has got a report on where we are.
There we go. So hi, I'm Chris Turner, Director of Systems and Supports. So at the beginning of the year, we came up with a bunch of district goals. And one of the district goals was for 100% of our students to attend at least 85% of the time. That's a decent mark. We're going to work it higher, but I want to kind of give a little progress on this. If we look at the state of Washington, last year, their daily attendance was 69.7%. Last year, our district's was 75.4. So we're above the state, but we're still below the 85. So we want to increase at least 10%. So we took a little data. right before Christmas, and you can look at the graph. The goal is the gray line, that's at 85%. And you can see this year we started slightly below where we started last year, but we didn't instantly start dropping nearly as fast. Last year, you see that line going straight, not straight down, but at a nice ski angle, right? And then in October, we turned it and we started going up, increasing our attendance. And then in December, that's always a very tough month. Kids, Christmas, that short time between Thanksgiving and Christmas, it lowered again. And so we should see it spike back up in January, which is a total normal thing. So part of this is due to the new systems that we put in place. Last year, there were some great base systems put in place for schools to take attendance, to stay on top, and to give kids interventions. So we built upon that, and then we're working with schools to be really really on top of it. And there's a better word, right? We're going to stay on top of it. So we put in a system where kids are gone, they automatically get phone calls, not once a day, but twice a day. So like last year it was set up that phone calls go home at 6:30 at night. So if you have let's say a fifth grader who wasn't in school, you don't find out till 6:30 at night. We didn't think that was good enough. So we have one that goes out at 11:30 and then at 6:30, and that goes out school-wide, and that's just part of our new system with Parent Square. We're able to do that. Then we have letters that go out, step 1, after 3 days. Then step 2, that's a call home from the school to kind of balance and say, hey, what's going on? We need you here. How can we help? Step 3, they have meetings at the building. They invite parents and the kids in, and they sit down and they say, what can we do to help you get to school? And then step 4 is when we finally have to put in a petition to the state, the Becca petition. And what happens then is the state typically stays it. They say, have one more meeting. And so we sit with Mason County Court and bring the parents in, and we have one last problem-solving meeting before that Becca petition goes in. And I've been loaded with them for the last number of days. And typically, you don't see a lot of parents and kids come in because these are kids that missed a lot of school. I think we're seeing about 65% of our kids and our parents come in on these meetings and making a big difference. So I anticipate we're going to easily make our goal, and we'll be able to set it even higher next year. And to me, attendance is absolutely core, because if they're not here, they're not learning. So that's where we need to start. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, yay us.
Is it just December because of sickness, weather, like all of the above?
I think it's all of the above.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the exact cause. It's just so typical to takes a nosedive.
interesting,
Yeah.
yeah.
And when you get close to those last couple days, right before Christmas, families are taking off.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a shift, you know, that happened after COVID where school, the importance of being here wasn't as great as it was, right? I think families got used to having doctor's appointments at any time. No big deal, right?
Sure.
And where before, we gotta make it outside of school time, and now we don't have to. But we have things in place because we're offering a lot more resources for kids that miss school. There's stuff online. They can keep up a little better, so there's this balance.
Yeah.
But over and over, we're preaching, gotta be in class
Yeah.
to learn. That's where learning
Yeah.
happens.
Thank you.
And our staff is working really hard on this. There was also a report nationally on NPR this week that talked about nationwide, over a third of the students, so over 33%, do not come to school regularly since COVID. And so it is a big problem, but we are seeing improvement, and I think the staff focus on it and helping kids understand how important it is to be here is making a big difference here in North Mason. Thank you, Chris.
Well, one more piece I was gonna put. We are currently, we hired an attendance secretary for the district. Her name's Shyla Jackson. I just wanted to highlight the great work that she's doing, because she's helping buildings stay on top of all their reports and all of their letters and that kind of stuff. But she's also putting together, and about ready to propose to me, an attendance campaign. We don't wanna just react when kids don't come to school. We wanna be proactive and say, why is school important? And so how do we get that out to the community? And so you'll be seeing that coming from us as well.
Is this in excused and unexcused absences?
This is based off of unexcused absences. So tackling excused absences is another beast.
Right.
And so it's kind of like, that's why we really want to do proactive messaging that you learn when you're in school. But this is based off unexcused absences, yes.
So is the attendance campaign going to target absences in general, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a fine balance, you know, parents and kids, they get, if I have, let's say, my spouse is in the military and she's home for a week and I choose to take my kids out of school, I gotta do that as a family, and we have to support that, even though we want kids in school. And that would be
Right.
an excused absence. Also, before COVID, they have a sniffle, get to school, right? Now they have a sniffle, we say, well, wait, you know, so there's a change. And so we definitely don't wanna shame people for excused absences, but we wanna say, it's really important to be here. And so
Right.
finding that balance is what we really gotta do.
Well, and yeah, I would be interested to see the data that Ms. Jackson is able to pull, because I think there's, with the state saying mental health can now be an excused absence, are we gonna see an uptick because students are identifying, I need a break? And or cultural differences, where some cultures say this event or tradition or holiday requires us to be home. It would just be interesting to see, like, on a more granular level.
I think your brain is working just like mine. And so, to start, we wanted to make sure that our data was right. Before we can dive in and start looking at subgroups and finding more causes, we have to make sure our data is right. And I think we're getting to that point. Because then when we know we're consistent with our data and it's good data, we can then start diving in and saying, where are the issues, what are we seeing, and what might we do about that? If it's not correct, though, that doesn't help us much. But
So
your
the
brain is
goal-
going, just like where mine is.
So the goal is eventually to kind of break it down into those.
Oh, yes.
To show that. not
The
just-
state already breaks it down for us. If you look at the OSPI's report card, they do break it down. I wanted, because I'm new to the district this year, is make sure that our attendance data is correct before we start jumping into there. Because it's so easy to say, hey, look at these subgroups, and then it may or may not be correct. And so let's make sure it's correct and then start looking at that, and we're reaching that point. So, great questions, and I'm glad you're asking them. That way you can hold me accountable to coming back and telling you about it.
I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but I'm curious for our student board members, just like anecdotally and having been through, you know, almost 90% of your schooling, what you feel like the attendance has been like amongst your peers. Like, do you feel like that's accurate, that post-COVID people feel like less inclined to come in?
Well, I was at lunch. I was looking for one of my friends. Wasn't at school. Went home. He was playing video games. He's like, "I'm sick." I'm like, "You don't sound really sick right now." So, you know.
Yeah.
So, like, anecdotally, yeah, I've noticed him and his family. It's like, "Oh, gotta sniffle, gotta stay home." My parents are still like, "You can go to school."
Yeah. Yeah.
I noticed that some friends skip school to go to work, even though in her case, work isn't a necessary thing to be skipping school. Like, yes, work is necessary, but not so necessary to skip school out of it. But her work doesn't seem to care as well. So
The states help us out with some of those things, because pretty soon kids are gonna be able to earn credit
yes.
when they're at work, and so that might help with that. And it's just so many little fine lines, you know. Some kids need to work to support families, and how do you say no? We can't make those judgments. We just have to keep saying how important school is, and it's not just the message. It comes right down to our teachers and how important do they make their class.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
and then there's so many little things we can do to help engage kids.
And I know for like sports, there is the excused absences. I don't know if that's a different excused absence than just calling out of school related to sports, but I know I've had to skip my fourth period a couple times because of bus garage issues. And my fourth period is an AP class, so I've had to try and do Zooms or calls, and because I'm a very advocate learner, so I'll do that, but I know many students won't. And so I miss fourth and fifth. And for bowling season, I miss fifth period twice a week.
That sure is
Oh,
a
wow.
conundrum because Our sports and after-school activities are the biggest at-risk program we have. It's how we engage kids in school, but yet there are things like bowling, baseball, other things that really impact time in school. So it's finding that balance and how do we do it? So great
Thanks for
observation.
sharing, you guys.
Anything else?
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much.
And I realized I skipped part of my report, but I want to give these guys an opportunity, so.
It's your spot.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, next, Kyle Ellis is, going to report to us on the surveys that we've been doing to help us make sure that we're focusing our strategic plan in the right areas, so.
All right, good evening, board members. I'm excited to share some of our results and highlights that we had with 2 different surveys that were sent out. In October, we sent out a survey to staff, and it was all about school culture and climate. And we did a very similar survey, actually in the same categories, for families that happened in December. They were both Likert-style questions, which means they measure opinions, attitudes, or behaviors. And the ones that we had were strongly disagree, neither disagree nor agree, and strongly agree. So each person that was filling out the survey had those 5 options and would have a statement that kind of went into different categories. There was a total of about 50 questions, and there were 4 to 6 questions in each category. And the categories we had were relationships, school participation, emotional safety, physical safety, bullying, emergency readiness, physical environment, cultural competence, instructional environment, and discipline. So a lot of information we were gathering from our staff and from our families. And we did this through Thought Exchange, which is a tool that we had in previous years for the district, but this year have really utilized a lot of the new features. It allowed us to create this survey, actually. We took questions that were from the CEE, Center for Educational Effectiveness, that would really focus in on climate and culture, and take some of those questions and put them together in a survey that was really geared towards North Mason. Our staff had about a 2-week window, and we provided some time and opportunity for staff to be able to fill that out, and our families had a 4-week window to complete the survey. These surveys were building based, and what I mean by that is that it was really focused on the actual building that we had, that your kid goes to, or that the teacher or staff member was working at. It wasn't, and we were able to get some really good district as a whole data, but we wanted to be able to also focus in on what is going on at each and every building. Some of the highlights that we had, if you look at our PowerPoint here, is the staff survey. We had 180 participants from staff members within the entire district. So that is a really good amount. We've done surveys in the past and usually do not get that kind of return. So staff was eager to share out their attitudes and opinions and behaviors that they have towards our buildings. And so that was really great, and I think we got some really good data from it. In our family survey, we had 254 participants, which is about a 10% return on it. And we haven't really sent out a survey like this full scale in a while, in a few years at least. So, but I think to get 254 on a survey like this on the first kind of run of it, still gives us some good information that we can work from. And give us some ideas about how to gather more input in future surveys. Some of the highlights in different categories for staff was positive relationships, cultural competence, and instructional environment. Those were areas where there was a strong agreement or strongly agree area and a very small amount of disagreement in the statements that were presented. And then in the family survey, the physical environment, the positive relationships, and the instructional environment were also really high on agreement and really small pieces of disagreement. In the areas of growth, both families and staff had I would say the biggest growth area in one of the bigger growth areas in discipline, and you can see in families bullying as well. What I did right here was I took how much in the average for each of the categories and just tried to see what would be the areas that had the smallest amount of agreement statements and the largest amount of disagreement statements to be able to kind of determine the biggest areas of growth. And you can kind of see up there discipline for both families and staff, and then bullying also for families, and then the piece with emotional safety, and that's a lot of that mental health piece when we're talking with the staff. being able, one of the statements was knowing where some resources were, where, if you need some extra support in those type of areas as well. So over there are the biggest areas of growth that we noticed, from each of the 2 surveys. And we've created some action steps for this. Like this, even though these surveys are actually really fresh for us, the first one was in October with staff, and then just got the final results right at the turn of the year for families. We've come up with some, I would say, some action steps, and actually already started putting some things in place. So, if you can go to the next slide. So we do have at the district level, we're kind of like right where that arrow is, I would say. We're in most of our buildings right now. We've shared the results with administration from the staff survey and and parts of the family survey with our building administrators, and now we're working with the board. We started working with some of our buildings as well in different areas from each of the surveys to be able to start attacking these areas that we need to grow in. And then I put communicate on the bottom because we need to be able to communicate the pieces that we're doing and show that we're working towards these different areas. One example is you saw that there was bullying and discipline on the previous graph. Well, we've already started or tried to shore up some of our harassment, intimidation, bullying practices and procedures. So our staff our principals at all the buildings are going to be using these updated HIB protocols and procedures to be able to communicate with families more and to be able to screen differently than they have in the past. So when we get some of these HIB, what's the word? When someone report a HIB report, our principals now have some really clear procedures that they can follow and start addressing them, and it really gears on communicating with family pretty consistently within the timelines for those HIB protocols and reports. So
Is HIB harassment?
Harassment, intimidation, bullying.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so they'll, in our long range, so we started off with our survey, staff and families, and we're gonna survey them, have each of those surveys again towards the end of the school year. We have a tentative date for staff in March, April, and then April, May for families. And we're already trying to figure out a way to get more families engaged. Invite them in. We have some conferences towards the end of the school year. I've seen it in other districts where we would set up computers and say, families, on your way to your conference, spend 10 minutes working on the survey, or right afterwards, make sure and try to get as much family engagement on those surveys as well. I didn't put it up here, but we also have a plan to survey students with the same type of tool, same categories. There's a generated list of about 50 questions that we can use for students as well. This is all very new to us, so we're trying to gather as much data and include this in some of our action planning as we can. And then build the long-term goals using the 2 surveys and other forms of data we collect. Chris just shared a lot of data we collect on attendance that goes in some of our long-range planning. We have a lot of different, we're going to go over in February some of our mid-year assessment data for academics. That's going to be part of our long-range planning when and surveys are definitely going to be a big part of that. So, are there any questions on our surveys? Yes.
Could you explain more on the cultural competence questions?
So a lot of that revolves around like professional development. Do teachers have skills? Do they have they received different forms of professional development that they can implement into their classroom teaching? Are we doing enough to have cultural competence around the community that we serve?
And so these action steps, these long-term goals, this all folds into our strategic planning.
Yes, this is all folding into that
vision.
process.
And I'm curious about, with discipline being, an area of growth for both staff and families, like what about discipline, were they really struggling with or commenting on?
Yeah, so some of the statements were like fairness within discipline, or
Things
what are
feeling
staff
arbitrary,
right? Are we doing? Does it match the actual behavior? Do those type of things when it comes to discipline? Do we see it as and it varied building to building, and across the district it looked like an area that, and I didn't talk about, we actually are doing some steps as a district working with our building principals in how they're managing discipline within each of their buildings. And I know a couple of the principals have already started working with their building leadership teams and developing plans for, how they collect data for discipline and their response to discipline.
And
So a
we're
lot of-
calibrating the response
Yeah.
across the district, so, if an offense occurs in any of our buildings, there would be a similar response.
Right, right.
Or within a building, if an
Right.
offense occurs
Yes.
Tuesday, there would be a similar response if it occurred again with somebody else on Friday, who might not be the same as the person on Tuesday. So
Right.
that is some work that Chris and Kyle are both doing with our building principals to make sure that that addresses that piece about fairness and consistency in how we respond to student behaviors. Because students need consistency to learn how to behave appropriately.
And that's really what was rising to the top, consistency. Okay.
Well,
I
and
know-
I'm
and I
wondering
know-
about the word fairness. I wonder if that's, would equitable be more of an accurate word? Because fair,
I think,
Bec-
sorry.
I was just gonna say, there could be mitigating circumstances where it might be the same offense, but if there's some mitigating circumstances with each one, would we necessarily want to treat this offense on Tuesday the same as a different student committing the same offense on Friday? So.
Right, but that's where we have to have everything outlined enough so that we have a structure that we can say, you know, for this offense, the baseline that we would respond with is, you know, a day of in-school suspension. But then there's a range, and we take into account that there's different circumstances with different students. So while the baseline might be ISS, it could be a little less or a little more, depending on history, depending on the student's own needs and situation and all of that, so that from our perspective, from the district perspective, that equity piece is really, really strong. Part of what we read in the surveys was some concern that people weren't sure about, because there wasn't consistency in all the places, so people weren't sure that if I did something and you did something, anybody would talk to both of us.
Right.
So we wanted to make sure that that piece was in place, so that then when we make those decisions that are different because students are different, and what is the right thing for me or you or Eric might be different in the same situation, that we have a basis to talk about to the degree that we can, that we make different decisions for different kids.
And Dana, thank you for pointing that, oh, good.
Just kind of add, and part of the system that we have is there is implicit bias, there's unconscious bias that take place if we just randomly go. And so our system's set up so we can actually address those things and make sure that, because equity is the right word, but fairness is also there. So there has to be consistent discipline that also takes in consideration each individual kid, without just running amok, right? Because we know there's bias in there.
I think one thing Dana also said too with the communication, that was a big piece too. As we're communicating with all parties involved, I think that was on both sides, the staff and the families, when it comes to discipline, is making sure that we're in constant communication with everybody involved. Not everybody's going to always agree with the discipline that happens, and that's okay, but as long as we're communicating and doing it with care, I think that's what a lot of people are looking for.
Right.
I had a question regarding communication. For the survey, is there anything being done to reach out to those that may have language barriers, et cetera, especially for some of the families?
And yes, I think that's part of our development when we have those parent-teacher conferences and working with the resources that we have to be able to make sure that, the survey itself did go out in multiple languages, so that piece was great, but now it's, okay, can we make sure that we're getting if we're representative of our entire district? And that's as a noticing that we really want to solve for the spring conference, the spring timeframe for that second piece of the survey.
So like, for example, by doing it in person, we could have staff available to help families respond, because if Kahaval is the language that parent speaks, they might not have experience with it in writing, and so we can help them get their responses recorded.
Is there any interest in possibly comparing some of the like safety bullying, mental health aspects of this survey that families took with the latest Healthy Youth Survey that covers those same
Yeah,
sort of.
I think
Because, you know,
that-
it's sometimes students say one thing and then families say something totally different. It's interesting to see.
Yeah, and it'll be great that when we use this survey tool with our students towards the end of the year as well, so we'll have those kind of like 3 layers for our community as well. So yeah, I think looking at all the different types of assessment that we're.
But we will pull that,
collecting, but
that's a
yes.
data point that we'll pull in.
Very cool.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go back just a step. We actually have a study session planned for the beginning of, prior to the February meeting. We have asked, I'm blanking, Trevor, who is our advisor when we look at bonds and things, to come in and do kind of an education session with our board about current state in the state of how bonds and levies are going, what our history is in North Mason, and those kinds of things, because we want you all to be prepared for decisions that we might ask you to make in the next several months and next few years. So, and because we have so much newness on the board, even our people who've been here the longest haven't been here that long, it made sense to have a study session where we could really dig in and look at the data and get some information. And because he is our advisor and he can just answer those questions in detail, and we'll have lots of great graphs and information. So we do have that one planned at 5:30 in February. But then I also wanted to follow up because we have a facilities committee meeting, we have a technology committee meeting. As you heard from the technology report, we have some needs that we're going to have to address in various ways over the next few years. And so as next year, is our year in February to go out for another levy. And then we're gonna have to make some decisions in the next several months about how and what we're gonna ask for and what that's gonna look like. And Trevor's gonna help us look at some numbers there. But also, we're gonna have to decide at some point in the next several years or few years, depending where we go, about a bond or a potential bond or multiple bonds or a long-range plan for bonding as we look at our growth in our community. And we do have a update from Flow Analytics on our demographic report coming before too long, but I don't have that in my hot little hands yet. But we did do some work with Eric Nelson on evaluating and helping us through the initial processes of preparing for looking at bonds, which is doing a site survey study. And so he has given us that information, but I would like to follow up the February meeting with perhaps a March study session to have Eric come and present the site survey to you and answer questions so that, again, you are well educated, so that down the road, when we start having to make decisions, you will have the background knowledge to make effective decisions without having to ask questions that make you feel like we should know more about this. So that's my plan.
Sounds good.
Just wanted to let you know about that.
Good.
And the next thing on the report is the superintendent budget guidelines. So every year about this time, I sit down with Dan and we look at things like our potential projections, and we look at our district improvement plan, about the goals, look at the goals we've set with our staff. We look at our projected numbers for dollars that we will receive in levy and from state apportionment, and we write some general budget guidelines for how we are going to develop the budget that Dan and I will bring to you later in the year. So that's what this document is. This is our outline of what we're going to do as we develop our budget. And basically what we do is in North Mason, we start with our kids and we start with our goals for our kids, and we build our budget to support that work. And this just gives you a little more detail, line by line, about some of the ways that we look at that. It talks about how much debt we have and what percentage that is, and we're now at like just under 20, when we're talking bonds going forward, and levies and, well, bonds, not levies, bonds and non-voted debt, we are under 25% of our total available amount of money that we could get in bonds, which is pretty low and really good going forward. And so it just gives you all of that information, and you'll have this in front of you so that when we come back in June with the budget proposal, you'll know where it came from.
Very good.
Nice.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Dan.
Budget status update.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Dan King. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations here in North Mason School District. And I'm here tonight to present to you the budget status report for our budget through December 31st, 2023. And we're going to begin with the other funds. So one thing I like to do is try to provide some education or some background on some of the budget too, especially for board members that might be new. So if I over-explain, please excuse me. I don't want to assume anything, okay? And then as time goes on, I'll kind of really understand kind of where everyone's at. So if you have any questions too, I'm very happy to answer your questions. So we have 5 different funds. There's the general fund. That's our main fund that we use for most of our expenditures, and that's where most of our apportionment goes into. But we start this budget status report with the 4 other funds. So that's why we call this the other fund report. So you can see up here we have the budget status, which is the end balance for these funds at the end of December. So at the end of December, our capital projects fund ended with a balance of $194,492. That was a decrease of $11,591 from November. Our debt service fund, and that's the fund we use to pay off for our bonds, our voted debt, and also we have some non-voted debt as well. But that fund is used for that purpose only. That fund had a fund balance at the end of December of $659,596. And that was an increase of $24,342. So funds that go into that are taxes received through the county treasurer. And also we transfer funds from our general fund into this fund to make sure we have enough to make those bond payments. Our ASB fund, that's the Associated Student Body, the fund balance at the end of December was $442,621, a decrease of $22,820. And then our transportation vehicle fund, which is a fund that is used, this fund right here is used to replace school buses. So our buses are on a depreciation schedule, and as that depreciation schedule comes to a term, we get that amount of money to replace the buses. And it comes to us through our apportionment, and then we use it specifically, and it's only for that purpose, to replace buses. So at the end of December, we ended with $336,486 as a fund balance in that fund. And that was an increase of $1,438. So you're wondering, where did that come from? That is from investments. Each of these funds, we invest that balance, so it's not just sitting there, sitting idle. We put those into an investment account where we get investments on those, on each one of these each month, as well as our general fund. So on the next page of this, we have our enrollment report. So our enrollment is the one thing during the budget status report tonight and each night that is actually through the current month. So this is our January enrollment. So it's broken down into our regular FTE, which is K-12, and it has Running Start in there, and then our TTK, our Transition to Kindergarten enrollment. So our regular FTE was 2,268 students. To be more specific, 2,268.84 FTE. That was down 4.59 from December. And then our Transition to Kindergarten FTE for January was 33 students, and that is an increase of 2.5 FTE. Now, our average FTE for the year so far, if you look on on the graph on the far right where it says August, the blue bar, it has our average, 2,275.9 for our regular FTE as an average. So now let's go on to our general fund balance report. Again, this is through December. So the reports I run just end in December. There are changes, in the last three weeks or so since then. So it's not exactly where we are on this point in time, but where the data takes me is through the end of the previous month. So we'll start with our revenues. So at the end of December, our total revenues actual year to date were 30.27% of what we had projected. So, 30.2% of our annual revenues, we projected we'd be at 31.99. So really close to where we had projected we'd be. For local revenues, we were at 39.86%, and we had projected we'd be at, bless you, 40.8. For state revenues, we were at 30.32%, and we projected we'd be at 31.13. And our federal revenue sources, we were at 21.01%, and we projected we'd be at 30.66. So by and large, we're close to where we had projected we'd be. With the exception of federal, we're a bit lower. And really, that's because a lot of these federal revenues are due to federal grants that we're making claims on. And that's a process that really just gets started in November, December, as we're spending a lot of time in September, October just doing the year-end process. So we should expect to see that catching up as we go through the fiscal year. Looking down at the table below, you can see through December how much in revenues in these top 10 sources we've received, with the apportionment being $7,500,529. Let's jump down to local property taxes. That's our levy, plus there's some other, maybe some back taxes. So our levy for the year is $3,831,125. But we might collect a little more than that if there's back taxes owed from a previous year, for example. But through December, we had collected about 40% of our budgeted levy. So we're moving along well with that. Back to that table, Jackie. The bottom ones there, starting with impact aid, maintenance, and operations on down, you can see those are lesser amounts, but all of those do matter. Things like investment earnings, I mentioned that we invest each month. So far this year, we've collected $62,272 in investments in our general fund. It's something that we do twice a month to stay on top of that, to make sure that we're getting maximum investment. But all of these things together amount to $259,438 so far this year, just in these smaller kinds of revenue sources. So just wanted to note that. This next slide shows our budgeted general fund revenues for the year, $42,395,487. That's what we budgeted for revenues for the year. Our projected year-to-date revenues through December, $13,563,294. And our current revenues collected were $12,835,125. So a little under what we had projected. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Now we're looking at our expenditures through December. So that top left one, that radio dial there, that shows, this is a really important one. That is our projected year-end balance as a percent of our budgeted expenditures at December 31st, that point in time. So at that point in time, our projected year-end balance is 8.59% of our budgeted expenditures. And we are required to be between 8 and 10%. So we're within that, and so that's a good thing to see. Our total expenditures actual year to date through December, we're at 32.61%. So when you think about it, through December, we are a third of the way through the school year, and we're about 33% there in our expenditures. So we're kind of moving through the year around where we should be. We had projected we'd be at 34.24. Salaries and benefits, actual year-to-date, 31.69% compared to the projection of 32.39. And for basic ed, actual year-to-date, 30.73%, and we have projected we'd be at 34.58. So some of these we're spending less than we actually projected. So that helps us out when our revenues are a little less than we had projected too. So it kind of balances each other out and really have a difference of like $24,000 when we look at it that way. So that's a good thing. In this table here below, you can see our top 10 expenditures by program. I don't know that I need to read through each and every one of those, but you can see basic education, really that's our main one, where our expenditures are, district-wide support and special education. It also shows us where we are to date with our transportation and our food service and some of the other ones, CTE and ALE and those kind of programs. So those are the main ones. Now let's go to the next slide where we have kind of the big picture here. You can see that we budgeted $42,495,683 for the year in expenditures. We projected that by the end of December, we would have already spent $14,687,524, but we actually spent $13,988,634. So our year-to-date general fund expenditures through December were $698,890 less than what we had projected. So again, the difference in the revenues and expenditures, when you look at those together, it's a $24,000 difference. So we're doing pretty good in that way. Okay, let's look at the next slide. This is our year-end fund balance, year-to-date and projection. So the year-to-date would be August through December. And so at the end of December, our general fund balance had $3,118,717 there. And based on our budgetary data, we're projected to end the year with $3,683,154. Okay? So in our budget, we said we would end at $3,783,873. So it's about a $100 difference, but again, this is a projection based on the data that we currently have in our system, and we're going to see that change as we go through the fiscal year. Now, the last slide, please. This is a summary, but I like this because it compares this year, this point in time, to last year, this point in time. So on the right, the table has our revenues and expenditures and our fund balance this year, what we budgeted, and then where we are currently through December, and then the percentage too that shows, for example, our current year-to-date expenditures are $12,835,125, and that matches what I shared before. Revenues, I don't know if I just said expenditures, I meant revenues. That's 30.27% of our budget, which is about where we should be. We're about through December, third of the way through the year. In our expenditures, $13,988,634. That was 32.92% of what we had budgeted. And if you compare to last year, you can see last year at this point in time through December, our revenues were at 29.22 and our expenditures were at 32.22. And if we were to go back 3, 4, 5 years, the pandemic kind of changed things a little bit, but if you were to go back and look at the trend, you can see that there really aren't any real big anomalies in our spending pattern as we go through the year. Because we really, a big part of our expenditures and our budget has to do with our revenues has to do with enrollment. So we have a pretty good idea of what we're going to be receiving. And our expenditures, a lot of that is salaries and benefits. And we have a pretty good handle on what that's going to be too. And so it makes it's of course, there's a lot of variables, but it doesn't make it extremely difficult to project where we should be and to see that we're staying on track. So far, it looks like we're doing a pretty good job of staying on track, and I look forward to just keeping you posted as we go through the year. Does anyone have any questions?
The first report, the other funds report, I believe it was.
Yes.
The second page, the enrollment status, you said it included Running Start. Does it also include the ALE
Yes,
enrollment?
yes.
And then in the general funds report in revenue, non-high participation, is that what Greatview pays us?
Greatview,
Pioneer.
Hood Canal, I believe.
Quick Canal, Pioneer.
Pioneer.
Pioneer. Mhm.
Mostly group view.
Mostly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. Good questions.
Do we get any money if someone sends a student here that's like part of the Shelton School District, a school district that does have a high school?
Well, yeah, they count as part of our apportionments. They
Oh.
count as, we
Our
don't get,
student.
we get the money because they're enrolled
I
here.
see,
We
yeah.
don't get money from Shelton. for
Gotcha,
that.
gotcha.
Yeah, we have, choice transfer students, and that does help with our FTE and does reflect in our apportionment.
Is that a lot from choice?
It's about 11%. When we present the Flow Analytics final report, you
Oh,
can
that's
see the
fascinating.
numbers. It's really, it's higher than I thought it was. So, in this most recent report, so, depending on the grade level.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I bet, our county is just so spread out and people who are in Shelton may feel like it's faster to get here than down there, so I
Yeah.
get it.
It'd be interesting to see though, also James Taylor and Homelink, if students transfer in to utilize our alternative options.
Yeah.
If it wasn't-
well, yeah, and that is, many districts saw their ALE enrollment decline. Many districts chose to cut their ALE programs in this past year, and we haven't. And so we anticipate we'll continue to see growth there. It's hard to predict until kids register, but we have not seen a decline from the numbers that we got for the secondary kids anyway, when we were in remote learning. And we are continuing to see kids trickle in from neighboring districts where they are eliminating or decreasing ALE options.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Dan.
Awesome. All right. Now we are on to the upcoming board letter columnists, and would you like to,
Yeah, I'll give a little history because this will be new for some people. So, many years ago, the Kitsap Sun did a monthly supplement that was all about North Mason or Mason County. And so we would have a section in there, and board members would take turns each month writing a specific letter to the community. And then they cut that section from the paper. And so then we kind of transitioned to have our board members reporting to the community through our own media, through the website. But in this most recent year and a half, 2 years, we now actually have a communications person in a department doing a lot of really good work in expanding our communication with the community, with the newsletter, with all of the different pieces of social media. So we'd like to, the board letter has become a little bit redundant. And by the time it gets done and comes out, we've moved on to other news to share with the community. So we're recommending that we eliminate that piece for the board. And Amanda will work with us to ensure that we include board voice in those newsletters and student board voice maybe to a greater degree in those newsletters and and other forms of media as we share things with our community. But that probably those letters are kind of have served their purpose and it's time to move on. So,
Do we need to take
all
action?
right, so this is an action item, so I would entertain a motion to accept the removal
I'll make
or
we gotta make a motion.
transfer of that.
We gotta make a motion, right?
Right, am I entertaining the motion, or should we just make that?
you need to entertain a motion.
Yes. So I am entertaining the motion that we transfer our letter columnist to the appropriate place. That
Remove it from the agenda.
Remove it from the agenda.
I will make a recommendation that we remove the upcoming board letter columnist to have our communication specialist take that over and talk to the community about it.
All right, will this still be, and any discussion? And I'm wondering, will this still be something that does come up where it is brought to us, or is it just going to become of that and not be on here anymore?
No, it just won't be on here. Amanda will just continue to do her amazing work and grow our communication avenues so that we can have a lot of different ways to interact, going both directions with our community and in more authentic, deeper ways.
I just would, if Amanda doesn't feel uncomfortable coming up, I have for discussion, I'm curious, and this is also marketing to marketing, I'm curious your process, if you want to like share with us how you develop your stories and all the different avenues that you in the district that we're currently using. Could you give like a rundown?
On the fly, y'all.
On the spot?
So just repeat the question, Arla?
Yeah, I'm curious about your process, like how you are developing stories, like where you are going right now, what your rhythm is. And then secondly, I'm curious just to share out, especially for our new members, all of the different places that we are communicating with the public, all the different social media, newsletters, whatever we're out doing.
I'm Amanda Marley Clark, so for those who don't know me yet. So basically my process, I've been working basically since I got here to forge relationships with the buildings, with the teachers, with the students, and basically try to have their voice heard, and kind of peel back the layers and show the heart of who we are, because there is so much heart in this district. So I've been this past year, or since September, I kind of made a vow to myself to make sure I get each activity seen at least once. So like I was at the bowling the other night, and just so that I don't get the commentary like, what about us? I don't want anyone asking, what about me? Sometimes I'll have people write to me, what about JV? What about, there's only so many hours in a day. So what I've also been trying to do is create some ambassadors in the community where I say, hey, I would love to get your content. It's a little bit, as a journalist, you would know this, it's one thing to get sent a picture, what's the backstory? So I do spend a lot of time going, back and forth, what is the detail, what's the description, what happened? Obviously better if you're in person to, get that yourself. But, so that's my process, is really strengthening those relationships and, like you said about the board, we can find ways to integrate, what are you guys doing, just in a more natural kind of organic way, like Dana mentioned. And just so that people are always seeing the behind the scenes. And what was the other part of the question?
If you could just sort of list and name all the ways
places,
that
yeah.
we.
So obviously, we're on Facebook, which is our, seems to be our community's primary source of information. I've also recently developed an Instagram page where I try to do a little bit more fun things, try to get some student engagement and sharing that way. So I cross-reference like what the cheer team's doing and what basketball's doing. I tag people there. Twitter, X we have. So that's more for announcements, for, business, kind of taking care of business, linking to the website, linking back. We have the district newsletter, though since we've had Parent Square, there's been a little bit of a challenge for me getting the formatting just right. I mean, I had it just as I wanted it before, so I'm working on that and looking at other ways to establish a place for that on the website, and keep driving traffic to our presence, our website.
And just so you understand that with Parent Square, part of the choice with going with that communication tool was the translation ability for those documents. And so they have to be in the right format for people to be able to select, I want to read this in Slovakian. And so that's been kind of not quite as seamless as we understood when we went forward, but Amanda's doing a great job getting us there.
It's really the graphic component, because
Yeah.
the translation is pretty good. We still have to go through it. Mateo goes through it just to make sure it's an authentic representation. There's a few nuances, but it's the graphic portion that just is not as engaging, which I felt kind of our community, really gravitated to the visual impact of the newsletter, how we had it. So I'm looking at other ways to do
Is
that.
it a monthly newsletter?
Yeah, I was putting it out once a month. So, and again, it's kind of to our staff, to our community. There's a lot of, there's a huge audience for it. So it's,
I like reading it.
and then, beyond the Bulldogs, that portion, it really brings in our community, and our community is so supportive of our students. So that's an important piece that I don't want lost.
I like the alumni stories. That's been fun. Do
And
we
then the
have-
picnic was really, in large part, Amanda's brainstorm. And
Right.
so that has been a huge community event.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it started, to give credit where credit's due,
Okay.
with Jen, her wanting to do the resource fair, and then I kind of, put a little input in there, but it was a real team effort. But it's, the community really.
Do we have a YouTube channel or?
No, we don't have a YouTube. I believe there is a YouTube channel that Clint has set up, and they have to go through a certain process. I know some school districts use them. Right now, we haven't really needed that, but I know some of the schools are using it. Hawkins is using that. So,
Okay.
but back to your original question, just my process. I mean, it's I kind of walk around and I observe what's going on, and I think, oh, this could, like a line will drop into my head. I mean, you're a writer, so and it's like, oh, how can I always try to link back to what's the bigger picture? How does this reflect on the district? It's not just about putting out a picture or a story. It's about, why do our viewers care? Why does our community care? How does this impact our students? So trying to link back to your strategy, to your vision and mission as a board. So, but anyway, that's why I think if we incorporate what you're doing in, to the, instead of the columnist, the obvious, we just layer that in more nuanced.
So it's
but-
more integrated, yeah. Thank you.
So if you have any things you want to share, just reach out to me, and I'll kind of put it on the radar for.
And back to us if you need to use us for anything. I'm not like saying,
Well, actually,
for everybody, but I'm sure that's what
Back
we're
to the
here for.
picnic, we are presenting at the upcoming Waspera conference, the team, and what I'm thinking, just so that we're not droning on in our presentation, is incorporating some video. And what I'd love to do is get, you haven't been to the picnic yet, the new board members, but for the people who have been there, just a little clip, and I want to kind of layer that. I've talked to the principals, and they're willing to give a comment about, what does picnic mean to you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then just, I can put their titles underneath their commentary, and we'll have a little 2-minute video in our presentation about the importance of getting the buy-in from the school board, from the admin, from the leadership team for an event of this, impact, so.
That's great.
Thank you. You did very well for being thrown right into the meeting. Very good. Okay, so we are at,
We need to still
I
vote.
made it and there was discussion, and is there any other discussion? Okay, not hearing any, I will take a vote. All for, removing that from the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? And I forgot to add the,
Thanks.
student, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, and so that is approved. And then you're on to the legislative representative report.
I'm Arla. I'm the legislative rep for the board, the WASDA legislative rep. I have a few things here, so bear with me. We are in legislative session right now. It started January 8th. It's a short session this year. It rotates every year between short and long, so it's 60 days. And I've heard, so typically it's not quite as busy in a short session. It's supposed to be bills that didn't quite make it through last year, and they kind of get a final push this year. But what we've been seeing in the legislature is just a high rate of bills coming through, new ones too. So where did I? Yeah, there are more new and returning bills than there have been since 2013. And it's just been, there was a sort of moratorium during COVID of creating new policy bills, and that's been lifted. And so our legislators are very eager to push forward their bills. January 31st is the deadline that policy bills have to be voted on to get out of committee. So there's a lot of energy out there right now. The legislative priorities for WASDA, and WASDA is the Washington State School Directors Association, of which we're all members, and they are an advocacy group, and they help school board directors. They help us formulate our priorities and kind of then advocate that forward. So similar to last year, the priorities this year are lifting the special education cap, free school meals for across the state, paraeducator flexible funding for paraeducators, changing the bond language to a simple majority rather than the 2/3 that we consistently need, and updating STARS. And so this weekend coming up is legislative conference, and I'll be there with Deanna. Are any of our student board members coming? Wasn't sure. Okay. There's it's Day on the Hill is Monday, and so it's an opportunity where WASDA and the Washington Association of School Administrators, of which Dana's a part of, and Washington State Business officers, those three organizations combine for this 2-day conference in Olympia that culminates on Day on the Hill, which is Monday, where we collectively visit the Capitol and speak with our legislators about our priorities. And so I was then just going to share, it's a time where, where it's really important to voice your opinion on certain bills. However, I'm trying to open this up here. It can be a difficult thing to track just because it's all over the place and it's fast and furious, and last year was pretty crazy. Some bills to watch for, lifting the special education cap to 17.25%. So this would make funding special education more equitable. It would be giving school districts, it would allow us to actually, what is our percentage right now, Dana?
We're a little bit above that, so
Yeah.
it'll be closer to
So-
what we actually
Right.
have. And
Meaning that right now, the state does not give us enough money to fund the special education students that we are currently serving. So that's Senate Bill 6014 and House Bill 2180, if you're wanting to follow those. Increasing the funding to cover the costs of paraeducators to meet Initiative 1351 levels. That's Senate Bill 5882 and House Bill 1960. Increasing student access to free meals at public schools, House Bill 2058. And providing adequate and predictable student transportation, that's Senate Bill 5873. And then I just printed out a couple hearings this week in case it pings anybody's interest. Tomorrow at 4, and you can testify virtually. It's actually very easy. You can testify by saying pro or con, or you can actually write a whole thing about why this is important to you, or you can show up in person to an actual committee in Olympia. But there's a variety in the House Education Committee tomorrow evening, such as, modifying the requirements for public school instructional and supplemental instructional materials, requiring parent representation on instructional materials committees. There's bills about how we teach the Holocaust and genocide education in schools. Improving student outcomes by restricting mobile device use in schools. Establishing a grant program to purchase and install vape detectors in schools. That's all tomorrow. The 24th, which is Wednesday, in the Senate Early Learning and K-12 Committee, there's the Senate Bill 6082 about paraeducator compensation. There's a bill about classified school employee salaries, establishing a statewide network for student mental and behavioral health, and filing a declaration of intent to provide home-based instruction. Some of these are just interesting to just kind of look at and see who is pro and who is con, and you kind of get a sense of what is happening there. And then the last day for both, this week for both of the committees is the 25th, which is Thursday. And the House Education Committee has, at 8 a.m., they have 2 hearings, one on extending special ed services and one on supporting student well-being through instruction in social emotional skills. They've got a bunch of other stuff in executive session that you can look at. And then the Senate Early Learning Committee has bills on modifying student transportation allocation, mandating the instruction on the meaning and the history of the Pledge of Allegiance, concerning school district efficiencies and consolidation, and supporting the implementation of competency-based education. If any of those, if you need any help in understanding like how to testify, you can email me. And I can also send out information specific to any of those if you want to learn more. So that is my report.
I would like to add the bill that you mentioned that is on Wednesday that is addressing classified employee compensation. One of the key pieces of that bill is adding a new group for classified administrators, because classified administrators are currently just funded, to the degree that they're funded, just kind of put together with all classified employees. And so it would actually separate them out so they would be aligned like building principals and district office, other certificated employees in the budget, and actually fund some administrative roles. So I think that one is kind of a little bit hidden, but could be very helpful to budgets overall in districts, because as you know, like classified employee funding, in fact, we were just looking at one of the bills with Joan, and they're gonna increase our custodial funding in this bill to a whole 2.7 employees in custodians for our district. So anyway.
That's Senate Bill 6082, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
And I could also show anybody after the meeting how to go online and really quick and.
Yeah, it's
that.
really
It does
interesting.
walk you through it when you get on there a little bit, but there are times where it's like a lot on the page at one point, so.
Yeah, it's a
It would be
lot.
good.
It's pretty fast and
Let's
furious.
talk before the end of the meeting if you wanna go.
So,
You two guys.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Very nice. All right. Now we are on to the monitoring reports, and I do not believe we have any for action.
No new ones.
No new ones this time. And this is where, I'm gonna read this just because it's our first full board thing here. So monitoring reports, the school board adheres to the principles of policy governance. The board has written 4 sets of policies: ends, executive requirements, board superintendent relationships, and governance process. The ends policies describe the student outcomes the superintendent is charged with achieving. And the executive requirement policies set the parameters within, I'll lose my mind here, there we go, within which the superintendent must operate as she leads the district towards the expected ends. And the board superintendent relationship policies describe the way in which the board will oversee the superintendent's performance, and the superintendent will support the board. And the governance process policies describe how the board and its individual members shall conduct business, represent the community, and relate to each other. No less than once a year, the board receives and considers evidence regarding the level of compliance with the provisions of these 4 sets of policies, a few at each time, and the following are those policies to be monitored during this meeting. And we don't have any this time, but we will have an executive session, and you'll get to see a little bit more about how that works. So, and then the policy review is what we did last month, and did we have anything to discuss on that?
No, so what happens is after the board hears the reports and determines whatever they determine about the reports, at that point, we have a discussion that perhaps we want to make changes in some of those policies that the board has written. So last month, they didn't indicate that they wanted to make any changes in those 3 policies that we did the reports on. If they did, I would have brought some recommendations tonight to discuss.
Okay, and now at the adjournment phase, we will.
Dana, you did want to move the educational equity to a different month.
When is it now?
The monitoring report, we usually do it in December. You wanted to move it when we would have more information.
Mhm. Yeah, we'll just change that and bring it in probably next month or so.
Because that one we don't do, are we still doing that every?
Well, that one
3
we
or 4
originally were
months?
going to do in August only, and then we were doing it 3 times a year to start with.
Right.
But at this point, I think we're ready to transition to
Yeah.
an end of the school year time for
Okay.
a big report so that we have full data on all the areas that we set requirements for ourselves. Because as you know, that's one of our longer policies, and it says, this is what staff is going to do, this is what kids are going to do, this is what families are going to do, so that we work together to build equity and continue to grow that in our schools. So I think my recommendation is that Jackie and I will look at a month that you don't have too many reports to hear, and move it there
Okay.
and just do it once a year now.
Right. I did not have any
Okay.
additional things on anything.
Good to go. All right, at the adjournment phase, we are looking at an action of officially changing our board meeting schedule to the 4th Monday of every month. And however, Memorial Day is the 4th Monday of the month of May. And policy states that if a board meeting date falls on a holiday, the board meeting will be held the preceding Tuesday. If a quorum is available on that date, the board may adopt May 21st as the date of the May 24th board meeting. And the board, or the administration recommends that the board of directors approve and adopt 5/21/24 for May's board meeting, or a date that provides a quorum. And so I will start by entertaining a motion to change it to what it says right here.
I'll make a motion that the May school board meeting is that we approve and adopt May 21st for our May board meeting date.
For this year, okay, and any discussion at all? And everybody can make that? It sounds good? All good?
Maybe.
Okay, and so I will start with the students, because now that we're at the end, I'm getting the handle here, so. And signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I don't see, I see they're both in agreement. And then all for the rest of us signify by saying aye for approval.
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Not hearing any, that passes. And then we are on to the good of the order, board and superintendent. And where would we like to start with that?
I have something.
Okay.
Okay. As you're probably aware, a couple of months ago, we accepted a resignation from our high school football coach. This past week, the secondary team completed interviews and selection process. And we have a coach who has accepted the position. It will officially be in the personnel report in the February meeting, but John Fullington has agreed to be our head football coach for the coming year.
That's so cool.
For those of you who don't know, John is a North Mason High School graduate. He has extensive experience both as a player and as a coach, and he represents our community well, and I think folks are excited to have him take on that role.
And he's been working with the Hawkins kids, and my kid is a hard one to connect with, but he, with PE and a kid that would rather do video games than run, he gets him up and moving and he connects with him, so he's a really neat guy. So I'm really excited about that. Okay, so
does anybody else have anything for the?
yeah, anything for the good of the Orta?
I could start. I accepted a position on the relatively new, it launched in 2020 or maybe 2021, the WASDA School Directors of Color Caucus. And so they have a council that leads the work of that group. And we had our first meeting this past month, and we'll be meeting again right the day of our legislative conference on Sunday. And so that will be good. We'll get that going. I'm also on WASDA's annual conference planning committee, and we had a meeting last Friday, something, about conference in November, which I'm not sure I'll be able to attend, but it's fun to kind of be in on the planning for that. And the theme they're going for this year is perspective. And so they'll start looking at keynote speakers and that type of thing. And that's all that I have. I look forward to getting to know our new school board members and hoping that we're getting close to planning a retreat. So that's my 2 cents.
Very cool. All right. Just
We usually go in order and just say anything that we've been doing the last month.
But you don't have to.
You don't have to.
Nothing from your.
All right.
I just want to thank Amanda. Thank you for talking on the fly, on the spot. But also, I have noticed over however long it's been that you've been here, probably feels longer than it really has been. But there has been such an improvement in the social media presence with this district. You've done a phenomenal job, so thank you very much for that.
Good.
Yeah.
I see.
I don't have anything.
No? All right. I'm speechless. One time. No.
The only thing I'll say is she's not here tonight, but I want to thank Laura for everything she did for this board. A lot of you probably don't know, I've known Laura since I was probably a teenager. And she and Butch are just such amazing people. And it was really a pleasure to serve on the board with her and John for the time that they were here. So I know she's not here, but thank you, Laura.
Yeah. I grew up, my dad and her husband, they would go out hunting and doing everything when I was really little. So Laura has been there, but I knew Butch before I knew Laura. So yeah, but getting everything pretty neat. This is an amazing turnover, a brand new board. You know, it was like, I didn't think it would affect me as much, but I came in and I'm like, whole new life here. So I'm very excited about that.
Yep.
Okay, so we are going to, I can do the board self-assessment, which I do not have in paper form.
I have it. It's
Oh,
me.
do you want to do it?
So my name's on it.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it has my name right here saying I would do it. So
Oh.
yeah.
Go ahead.
And that's why I was like, when I saw it, I said, I don't remember seeing that, but okay.
Yeah. No,
maybe
I'm
I
glad
missed
you're
it.
doing it. And you can kind of explain a little bit what we do. So
Yeah, so our, this is part of our policy governance model of governance for our school board. We do a board self-assessment at the end of every meeting. And Jackie will, if it's your turn, Jackie will set you up with this sheet of paper here, and you just kind of go through and talk about the meeting behavior this month and whether we followed our governance principles. So under general meeting behavior, the agenda was well planned to focus on the real work of the board. Satisfactory. The board followed its agenda and did not allow itself to get sidetracked. Satisfactory. Board members prepared for and contributed to the meeting. Very satisfactory. The meeting proceeded without interruptions or distractions. Yes. The board's deliberations and decision-making processes were public. Yes. Participation was balanced. All participated, no one dominated. Members listened attentively, avoiding side conversations. Our work was conducted in an atmosphere of trust and openness, and meeting participants treated each other with respect and courtesy. I marked us all as satisfactory. We're also all here, so there's 5 of us. We'll all say 5, 7. Governance principles. Were these principles followed? So our board actions occur at the policy level rather than at the operational level. The board reviews policy about each topic before discussing that issue. In writing new policies, I'll actually mark that not applicable because we did not do that tonight, but we would start with a broad statement that becomes more detailed in a logical and disciplined sequence. We minimize time spent monitoring past performance. We routinely dedicate time to reviewing and improving our own processes. The board clarifies priorities and values when considering potential outcomes, beneficiaries, and costs of outcomes. The board follows an annual calendar, yes. The board chair helps the board efficiently conduct its meeting, yes. The board spends most of its time deliberating issues, defining and clarifying our vision, and linking with the community as opposed to fixing things. And the board supports the superintendent in any reasonable interpretation of its policies. So overall, I marked us as satisfactory.
All right, and thank you. All right, and then we are going to go to an executive session for the superintendent mid-year evaluation. And since there is no action to be taken afterwards, will the camera roll to the very end, or will it be done when we leave the room? Okay, so I will say that the next board meeting is going to be on February 26th here at, starting at 5:30 for a study session, and then the real meeting, the main meeting will start at 6:30 and on from that. So I am going to adjourn the meeting to the executive session where I will come back in and go back out.
Okay.
All right.